Okay, hello America, Weathersfield. This is a map. You have to forgive. I'm not. I just did this real fast. I'm not an artist, and this is definitely not to scale. And so it's hard to fit the spots needed to put into this. But this is to explain to you how also I'm not originally and still. Now we know how we could use those basic means for correlation. Correlation has means to discern where and how they originally all locations, areas, and states, the fact-sheeping nature of everyone, in response to everyone, and defenses of that. It was tactically, criminally foreign influenced. Our founders wanted us to understand that everyone had in layers forced words, forced treatments of positive and negative, forced treatments of identity. That if they didn't have them that way with themselves, as themselves, they'd be seen by a breaching method that was before the little nations that only let become big if they would stay by hurting each other, by staying individually grouped in together, also not fathoming how that would be and is exploited. So this is a map where George Washington had to come to meet with the French general in the furtherance of the plan behind James Madison, which forced everyone to counter theater that was still incapable of defending itself as what it was pretending to be free, but through contrast, which we'll examine. So this is where George Washington had to come to stay to meet with the French general to secure his help so they could become a country. The country were still themselves extorted, worse than extorted, enslaved. Fact-keeping nature enslaved. Sickly distinctly, everybody, including our country's identities, where no one had possession of it. So locations, areas, and states, criminal and citizen's natures of positive and of negative were engineered in collusion as victims, not fathoming any other. So I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a police force, I'm not a criminal. This is interbranch here and there in collusion with this. The same locations on the ground are still rolls with the same method /S, which also that America is about with database relationships since before computers. So it's just a phenomenon of it being how identity works. And computers have to mimic this. Not just mimic what is simultaneous. They have to mimic what is simultaneous that they can't be. Inventions could either work or not in relationship to its identity of value progression. They're either positive or negative, further or not in relationship to its identity of engineering as ourselves, as what we're not invented, individually grouped species identity of volume /S, invisible but still discernible. Areas, ages, sexes. The ancients had this figured out because they didn't have criminally foreign influenced sciences. Each age of them, sickly distinctly, as victims. So I have to turn this camera on to make you see. I'll say I have to look up to see. So here's the I don't know where the thing to turn it is. So here's where George Washington came. There's the corner of Church Street and Main Street. And here's the state of Connecticut judicial branch offices with the Fiennes family associated with the confessions recorded regarding a stranger. I don't know them. Also tied to their roles right here off Fox Connecticut News. And we'll see on WFS, near WFSB all along Route 3. And with people that live near me, associated with Wethersfield Police and other police forms and departments, intercities with them, with people that are the dispatchers, people associated with Jamie Crone, but also a Jamie Smith and his brother, with roles with doctors, overt criminal enterprises, people that answer the phones for the Wethersfield Police, and people forging and switching names with them, and federal criminal co-defendants, a former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and people like a Judge Killian, other judges before him, and doctors associated with their patients and criminals, associated on and off the Wethersfield Town Library, and where the Wethersfield Police used to be, where reportedly Jamie Smith's mother used to be the police dispatcher. And this is everyone forced to speak to other people. They're also starting fights, though. The Wethersfield Police and the new dispatchers that switch names call here like 4 months ago. Then they sequence shifts. They start fights. Now, they did this with child offenders. Recorded more than they're admitting. They went through whole things. Those courts and prisons, and the people who run them and their family members, everyone's neighbors, recorded and evolved through time. Where investigators, and vetting identities are kept criminally foreign influenced. Uses of identity ground locations. The same way that which was entrenched in with slavery that George Washington had to leave entrenched in Wethersfield, Connecticut, between New York and Boston. In the North, slavery was still entrenched in the North, distinctly from the South. Not just because it was colonized by another surface nation. Sophistication reveals that and how those surface nations were themselves, with this breaching method already being and having been applied since semi-ancient times, since before modern nations unfolded, grouped individually, grouped and together, tactical ulterior, from how we have to be able to cause evolution's fruits and gifts and means from nowhere to work. It's system. It is one. No one heard America told right. For example, proofs is that they never taught about how people could be motivated to self-value criminal insidious natures of positive treatments as fact-cheaping nature quality, as syntax nature quality, and negative treatments in collusion too, and with physical delusions, and with the rules crimes, predators, that then would keep the people from voice from where they were, to hide what they did from their locations, not just in cases, because that was their roles with uses of all identity ground locations, areas and states, where how everyone is a sequence nature that must come first, / simultaneous, because nothing that is nature is not a simultaneous nature, where and how it is value in relationship to and as the science that discerns the difference between criminal and insidious natures of positive treatments and ones that are not, let alone negative. See, but we had lawyers originally and still backed into a fighting style as victim predators, backed into types of law as victim predators, trying to defend themselves, everyone, but incapable of defending that and us at the same time. So they are manifest as different people. Oh, I don't even like that person, but they share styles, fake arrays of fake difference. In other words, passions and emotions by what science is, by what it says about someone when they knock, for example, Einstein, or if they take it as a knock. People make this nature incapable of having civil discussion while they're pretending to be civil, while they're preventing people from raising their voice where it could have and would and will once it's to counter things that people did that didn't have to die from different regions that are originally still leveraged. So people enter cities on and off Trinity College, on and off CCSU, and on and off Trinity College and CCSU, on and off campuses in town. There's a doctor, I forgot her, Dr. Graham, and there are other doctors recorded, confessed, and demonstrated with a state forensics location and with state police. And their family members also involved with predicate acts on my street with drugs, overt drugs, medicines, crimes, wire crime acts and methods, roles. Could by a method worse than that. See, but we have to have mandated law followed. They forge and switch names into branch because of how they've been used. There's overt criminal enterprises and the stewards of the Witness Protection Program and a Fianza family. Recorded, confessed, and demonstrated with his family involved with the body dumping spot of Billy Grasso and with the Dillon family and with neighbors of his by themselves and others. I don't know the Fianza family. They had strangers through a time that make connected confessions to me, rattle them off all at once. And then they have that involved with sequence shifts. These are also Connecticut people interbranch, intercities, leading up to the World Trade Center attack. In that context, and since, with proven and further recorded, roles tied to the people with the proven post-dated documents roles from inside the Ninth Circuit Court right next to the World Trade Center right before it got hit, leading up to that. And since that context, there are people attaching me and other people from that context to fake words, even including WFSB. They have military families also with this Fianza family on off the state judicial branch office I'll show you on this map. And associated with, there's a house on the corner of Church Street and Park Street that Connecticut media and people from Central Connecticut, this is in Old Wethersfield. This goes through Newington into New Britain, straight to, right around the corner from Church Street and Main Street is on Main Street where George Washington stayed with the French general. People on Church Street are involved with predicate acts on my street in this part of regular Wethersfield. And intercities through time and intercampuses. And they also do this intercities because then you can't report it anywhere. And when you try to report the simple things, like New Britain Superior Court has rape threats. It has other roles with worse natures of things and of wrongdoing and of predicate acts, roles, and methods recorded since before a principal child defender was caught. And they had the people involved with the wire crimes with my town's police chief and his extended family member also recorded, family members also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with the natures of wire crimes, sequence shifts, identity thefts, frauds, and uses of that increasingly because they've been doing this intercampuses through time. They have little girls who were confessed, recorded, demonstrated, involved with guys that like Joe DeMoro and Mike Kerr. They shared a girl, and then they were pretending not to know. They were. I don't know them. Those were people who sought me out for confessions when I was in middle school. I met Joe DeMoro one time in grammar school, tied to a Mr. Abruzzi. Told me to do it to do a maze he gave me. He got upset because I did it from the finish, right away. Finished it. And I never had a conversation in my life with that Mr. Abruzzi. But I found out a year later, there are people with Central Connecticut State University that through time are with military families and with intelligence families that are also linked with mayors and things like that, and with the employments with the schools that are involved with where we have foreign and domestic here and there that used to keep what is fluent through us. Needed to be a certain way sick because it keeps how it is fluent through us. Using and having used the premises treatments, the fact, treatment, nature, quality of everyone. Not just overall. This knew the identity of volume that locations, areas, and states would be. They would have their kids self-valuing roles, seeding to exploit vertical and horizontal database, organized crime acts and roles. Uses of criminal and city natures of positive treatments and of negative treatments, and have already standardized frustrations blamed on other things other than themselves, the reactions, frustrated reactions, and uses of them on and off campuses connected. So there are private companies and people with the Dillon family, with the Kerr family. There's a Paul Kelly, I also don't know him. And there's people associated with Mike Violet. And I barely know them. I never had class with them, too. So a whole bunch of people that are tied to Central Connecticut State University are involved with predicate acts with judges and prosecutors. Before, and also with locations, and also with campuses before the World Trade Center attack. Also with cases and depositions because they were needed to hide their life progressions. Their uses of investigations, and pretending legitimate vetting or whatever of themselves and of others. Everyone's self-valuing. Styles of people making opinions about others dishonestly. And sequence shifting. And see, when you have people that approach you with lies, which happens to everyone in this life because how everyone's pretending their integrity. Where and how, if there was integrity in true science with passions and emotions, it would have been revealed. The recorded clear as day, bonded natures of evil and of fake care relevant to where and how, since before cars. The pathology of how the homes would be built and how people would afford means to that was already set up. They already set it up with when slavery was there. That certain kind of torture method, that certain kind of identity theft / fraud method, that certain kind of extortion method, that certain kind of mental racketeering, worse than war crimes, pretending other offensively, as victim predators, frustrated. As rules, well, that's not my part of the hospital. I'm really legitimate. And thank God for them. See, but we have a whole bunch of things that are called healthcare that are not healthcare. We have a whole bunch of doctors, even ones with badges. Still delusions wrought. Still rules stacking names, valuing names, being and having been stacked. Because our hierarchies were already at being and having been used remotely. I asked for a response since before the World Trade Center attack. The investigators of it and their family members, also associated with Hartford Hospital, as the ones associated with the houses in my area, that are forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to roles with these officers with the name Sullivan, forging, switching names, as also 2 officers with the name McGee. And 2 different times they made formal arrests of me and made police reports, fabricated police reports roles and methods of that, where they switch it and writing. And these are the different locations they used criminally with those illusions, in collusion with what was going on with the locations. So there's a guy, I don't know his name, associated with the Smith family, the Jamie Smith, David Smith, people associated with fire department with them, and Inspector Mike. People associated with Aiello's family, also with Hartford and Wethersfield fire departments. There's a fire department right next to where George Washington had to meet with the French general, again, to secure our help, to secure his help with that which we had to leave entrenched with slavery. To secure his help with that plan that extorted England, worse than extorted England, further worse than no way to do anything about it. Even though they had remote control over England. And that loosened the control over England. There is complete possession over the identity of each modern nation, which is part of the answer why and how people blame other things, others themselves. The real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts and natures, where we have locations physical as America, as other countries that are that pathology, so to speak, set up since before modern roads. What modern roads just fit right in front of the doors to, these old houses. This trap. They have on-off locations from off them already having been all victim reactions. Ahs. Non-reactions. Wrong. And they already kept that self-defended, self-value. Manifest, blaming other things, others themselves. Manifest, within as the naive reactions that our bridge sciences voices have when we're in how they have to pretend integrity towards identity of the ground locations abridged. They have to value how they're all everyone's victims anyway. Wasn't anyone's fault. Oh, the past is gone, we just move forward. While they're thinking about what other people tell them to think. And if you search further, you say, well, I'm not expert on that, So there's a conversation that requires words like value and nature. Apart from uses of them, originally still criminally foreign influence delusions wrought. Methods of hiding it that are bound by a method that knew this would be the effect. So there is a vertical and horizontal database method that is not just interbranch databases. It is simultaneously private ones. It is simultaneously the overt criminal enterprises, private, and killers, all the victim predators maintained on-off locations through time with and as that. So they have job sites involved with hundreds of nations with the state of things and agreements where we share policing and stuff like that per them, per logic, in conjunction to what is known and unknown and what is actually said. And by when is not said. I'm writing this map because there are also people sequence shifting by pretending to be about privacy while they brought me up criminally, fabricating audio and video. And then they don't allow you anyone, they forge and switch names. If you go to courts alone, they'll often, they could and do fabricate audio and video. Misperceive things because they have physical delusions, but also because they were victims when they were kids involved with recorded predicate acts with their various schools that they forced them roles with because of how they hurt the boys and girls sickly, distinctly. And that's when they have, and people, conform syntax wise. Everyone. So we have things with like DACA, internations programs that have relationships to policing of locations. That is with awareness of whatever is Washington, D.C. and World Trade Center, Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, and Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut. Associated with people also with the transition from ALCA to RICA and with their family members. Involved with predicate acts with them. One's from my town, involved on these campuses. Now in the backgrounds, because these are people that are discrediting people on YouTube. They're discrediting people on Facebook. They're discrediting people on the platform. So because they have the platforms, they have everyone's sense and sensibilities, use James Austin's phrase. Not following the nature of the law and then defending that. And that's used as a breaching screening tool. Because the interbranch that are already with that are used already remotely by the foreign, they are having to hide lie progressions individually grouped and together. They are having to hide these lies, sequence shifts, finite, active, and progressive lies, identity thefts and frauds, roles and styles, in actually recorded natures. They say, well, we're legalized this way. It was criminally legalized. And there are roles with the former director of the FBI and his defending capacities criminally in Connecticut, and with people that are further involved with related cases and unrelated cases. And one in the Ninth Circuit Court, right next to the World Trade Center, right before it got hit. They post-dated documents that have been timely stamped from inside the court to appear late. These are also police forms through time and depositions, in other ways recorded, pretending passions and emotions with the police and with federal criminals that of all kinds of nature. Then they got caught, and with their family members. Then they got caught, and they keep doing that, and they pretend and they didn't know that those certain things were proven and stuff like that. Same ones involved with the people on the child offender registry, involved with the narratives with them, and with the locations uses, like on and off web school. There's the Klovinski's family and others associated with military police and their family members involved with identity thefts and frauds. And I never called that person my life note. Never, these are people that sought me out to confess these things. Time barely know them. These are people that are roles with interbranch tests, people the fake locations, fake ties to the people. Now these are the people also. He's recorded, confessed, demonstrated, involved with girls, with a wife that went to my grammar school, who I never had a conversation with. I don't even think I have a class with her ever. Lucinda. I never was around her, never saw her anywhere. But she was one of the ones that recorded, confessed, demonstrated. I think went to my grammar school. And associated with a former Mayor Gold, that Joe Aiello, and others as adults sought me out. In the course, I've been asking every year since the World Trade Center attack for help from others. Asked me for help because I didn't know it was associated with former director of the FBI until 2006 when I witnessed in the district court case defendant, former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and his co-defendants, like Thaddeus Grabowski, right before that, involved on Fox Connecticut News, with others, intercities, involved with predicate acts on campuses, on off the state judicial branch office, like with the Fianza family. Also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated with people on off 2 Route Highway involved with them on and off the state judicial branch offices, the house next there, involved with the body dumping spot of Billy Grasso, and or the people associated with the body dumping spot /S, because they had different narratives about that in different news articles at different times. And that was also on and off the WFSB, and I believe it's in Rocky Hill. I don't know exactly where. I believe it's off of Elm Street. Maybe it was around there. And there are places all along Route 3 that are associated with foreign and domestic families. Now there's a associated with the Wethersfield Police through time. 2 police chiefs, one years ago, and mine for years, also involved with this, with these officers forging names, switching names. They also confessed and recorded a Scalora family and a Phil Colella were involved with them, with the further predicate acts and names forging and switching in natures of wrongdoing on off the principal child offenders campus and further on off the campuses in town. These are people that have connections to locations on all sides of the high school, on all sides of schools in town, like the middle school and the high school. Rolls. Now it's right next to Church Street now too, basically. So the schools, the people that are answering the phones, they're using a method where they pretend people had conversations with their family members about things that are recorded. Like there are rape threats and there are confessions over the phone and other further regarding various natures of crime, including sexual, including medical, including judicial. There are dozens of people with New Britain Superior Court recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, confirmed, involved with people tied to my street and people tied to them. And they're starting the fights too, because then they want to solve it in their courts. But those courts are the ones recorded involved with the investigators, and these same people involved with the overt criminal enterprises and with the witness protection programs ties to my street. They know that too. The stewards of that are also recorded involved with this. Because this is since before the World Trade Center attack. The same house /S was involved with confessions regarding Connecticut gyms, the Connecticut boxing gyms, and regular gyms. All tied to the CCSU roles with predicate acts on CCSU. This is where judges and prosecutors have roles with crime methods bound on the campuses, because they're hiding life progressions. They're self-valuing roles with that having been fake things stacked into databases through time by the same people involved. Not for the reasons they're pretending to themselves and others. And where they know that is true, they can only understand. By understanding, they have to hide their styles of lying first, because that's all they're capable of doing. And name calling and pretending to be civil simultaneously. You know, so they're controlling aggression, and they're controlling theater civility that is a criminal insidious nature of it, that was employed as such by a worse method, that has that as methods, that has all as breaching screens and tools. What made slavery? A breaching method that had a whole bunch of methods of sick predicate acts, delivery system natures, of victim predators increasingly. Everyone. Because everyone was separated from that native course, where and how one identity of volume only increases. And it demonstrates this. With all exceptions, exception nature, demonstrating the same thing as Leith of Hadizes. Force, space, nature, transfer. What is nature? It's its identity. That identity that are revealed our own as a semi-nature relationship to and as the value of its own. Increasing, but as a positive or negative relationship to itself. So Earth's distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneously concentrated difference in relationship to the rest of space nature is increasingly, it's lost difference through us. So we go to outer space. So we self-value roles with it because we're through a filter, an archetypal filter that knew that it could keep each location, area, and state of every modern nation, forcing leaders to entertain natures of criminal and seditious natures of positive and of negative in collusion to all locations, all physical locations, and then further intersciences, intercampuses of each age and nature, sickly distinctly, by a method that is aware and was aware, is of sophistication since before modern nations. Founding parents who didn't have free speech in layers and had other forced. By that breaching method, if anything other was tried to develop, it would be discerned. This is database relationships, laws that were sustained that no one saw the agenda of. Everyone had to blame the real causes of negative value, nature, progressions, acts, and natures, other things other than themselves. It engineered that. It used and uses the fact human nature responses, and everyone goes, oh, that we go home at night, we can't think anymore. Get down, look at the round, you'll find the seed. The rest proceed. Please read.